Hi, and this is absolutely breaking, and it is absolutely massive. I dropped a note first thing this morning, and you may have seen this little teaser trailer I did a little while ago. That Leslie Roberts had she contacted me to say that there was a massive story coming, that I was to keep an eye out for it. She indicated it would be Sunday, but it seems that the papers couldn't sit on it, and they are releasing it right now. This is bang on. I'm recording this. It is 11:20. No, it's not. It's 14:20, and this came out at 14:11. So 9 minutes. I was literally between seeing this come up, doing my little 1 minute flash video for you to announce it, and then getting to this point where I'm actually recording. So I've opened up, set the new project going, and we're recording. This will be mind blowing. It will literally shock you. Ready for this? Set faces to stunned. The Nicola Sturgeon probe is now going to be the biggest corporate homicide inquiry in legal history. The police are actively investigating. We're going to have a look here at the headlines, but it is astonishing that it's gone. This has been announced, and it is not just a case of, oh, well, we'll see what we can do. They're actually looking. Here goes. So, Nicola Sturgeon COVID probe could be the biggest corporate homicide in legal history. Campaigner Leslie Roberts, God bless her mum, reveals that detectives from Operation Copa are actively looking into thousands of individual deaths. And she calls for the Lord Advocate to step back from the investigation. She must not get involved. Dorothy Bain must not be involved in this at all. She is too closely aligned with those at the top that may well be indicted for this series, this mass crime, this mass homicide. The Police Scotland investigation into avoidable deaths during the COVID-19 pandemic could turn into the biggest corporate homicide, not corporate manslaughter now, corporate homicide in history, according to one campaigner. Detectives have spent months interviewing former nurse Leslie Roberts after she submitted a criminal complaint against the Scottish Government under the Health and Safety at Work Act, naming former First Minister Nicola Sturgeon and her former Health Secretary Jean Freeman, people to whom we often jokingly refer as the Shipman sisters. But it may well be that Shipman looks like a complete amateur in comparison with these two if this investigation goes that way. This is stunning and huge. Miss Roberts, who was working on the front line with the NHS Greater Glasgow and Clyde at the start of the outbreak, told the Scottish Daily Express that she's now signed an agreed statement running to 35 pages, along with 52 productions as part of her submission to the sprawling Operation Copa inquiry. That is a lot of statement, and that is a lot of evidence. This is stunning, isn't it? This has got to be taken seriously. I think Sturgeon herself, her little bottom will be puckering today. She won't know what to do with herself. I bet she disappears. I wonder if she'll go on a private jet and go to some country with no extradition. That's unbelievable, isn't it? She won't be able to drive an electric Jaguar to it, that's for sure. Officers from the Unresolved Homicide Investigation Team are investigating all care home deaths due to COVID and are currently engaged in the mammoth task of visiting every Scottish care home to speak to staff, residents and relatives of those who died. Official figures from the National Records of Scotland show there were 2,656 COVID deaths in Scottish care homes in 2020, including 1,817 in April and May alone. A further 3,616 people died in hospital where COVID-19 was mentioned on the death certificate, with 419 dying at home and 11 in other institutions such as prisons. That's a lot of deaths, and if these could have been avoided, well, it's corporate homicide. In 2021, and that was just 1 year alone, remember. In 2021, there were 929 COVID deaths in care homes, 4,352 in hospitals, 510 in home, and 27 in other institutions. The figures for 2022, which many regard as the final year of the pandemic, include 893 care home deaths, 2,688 hospital deaths, 339 home deaths, and 13 in other places. Now, I'm going to make a point here. It was always pushed, and the authorities, including Cranky, were always pushing. Oh, if you had this death, it's a COVID death. They were trying to push to up the numbers of COVID cases and COVID deaths. They kept trying to frighten people. Push the numbers up, push the numbers up, push the numbers up. Isn't it funny how that may well come back and bite her on the arse? All those COVID deaths could be laid at her door. Isn't that fantastic? She was pushing to get those numbers higher and higher and ever higher again. And it turns out that raising it so high is just adding and adding and adding to her potential guilt and her potential sentence. I'm excited. I shouldn't be. It's people dying, and I'm very sorry for that. But I'm excited at the prospect of getting Cranky into a court and then into a prison, and with Freeman next to her, and that'll be them for the rest of their unnatural lives. Of the 62,933 people who died in Scotland last year, 3,933 had COVID mentioned on the death certificate, 6.2% of all deaths. For 2021, there were 63,586 deaths and 5,818 linked to COVID, 9.1%. And the biggest year was 2020 with 64,500 deaths with 6,000 linked to COVID. It was 10.3%. Now, of course, in reality, they weren't all that number. What it was, of course, was someone had had COVID 2 weeks prior and run over by a bus. And they were going, it's a COVID death. That's how stupid this was. Anyway, this means that detectives and prosecutors must establish how many, if any, of more than 16,000 deaths could have been avoided were it not for criminal negligence by a third party, particularly that first deadly wave in the spring of 2020. According to the latest figures from the Care Inspectorate Watchdog, there are 1,008 care homes for older people registered in Scotland, but Miss Roberts has been told that offers intend to visit each and every one of them to take statements, as well as looking into any other COVID deaths where red flags have been raised. Leslie, you are an absolute hero. I'm speaking directly to you now. You are an absolute hero. I've had the honour of talking to you. I've had the honour of knowing you. And I've got to say, you are way better than any of that scum in Holyrood. You're genuine. You are caring. You are a human being. And that is a description that cannot be applied to them because they are just inhumane. So thank you for your work and effort on this. Anyway, going to what you were going back into it here, what you said was the police said that they're investigating hospitals, care homes and all deaths due to COVID. They then advised that they would be talking to the staff involved, relatives of those no longer with us and other relevant parties. They deemed my evidence as being vast and it would take a very long time to investigate this entire operation. And I don't care how long it takes to investigate, so long as once it's investigated, she is brought to book, or they both are brought to book. There you go. There's one of the bravest and hardest working, most dedicated women in Scotland who's fought a long, hard battle at great personal expense that I know. And, the stresses involved, the mental stress, the physical worry, the emotional trauma that woman has gone through. She's an inspiration, truly is. Former health and safety prosecutor Roger Livermore, he who was standing next to her in that photograph, and former NHS Usher and Aaron whistleblower Rab Wilson, founder members of the Action for Safe and Accountable People's NHS campaign, also submitted a complaint to the police alongside Miss Roberts back in March 2023. She said, I've signed off 52 productions and agreed a statement of 35 pages. Both Roger and I, unknown to each other, both put our statements, in our statements, that we don't want Dorothy Bain to have any part of the investigation because we don't believe she would look at it impartially. She would be quite impossible for her to look at it impartially. She's a member of the government. She sits in the cabinet with these people. There is no way but someone so closely aligned to them can be impartial. She must be recused, I think is the correct term. The Scotland Act allows her to sit in a dual role as Lord Advocate and also as a government minister. How can a government minister oversee a case where she would be prosecuting her former boss and her former colleagues? Sources at the Crown Office and the Procurator Fiscal Service say COVID death investigations involve complex technical and medical issues requiring the instruction of independent experts before the Procurator Fiscal can decide whether any action should be taken and if there is any basis for criminal proceedings or a fatal accident inquiry. They added that no report alleging any criminality on the part of any politician has ever been received to date from Police Scotland. Not yet, because they're still investigating. A spokesman said it is standard practice that the Lord Advocate and Solicitor General do not take prosecution decisions on allegations made against politicians. Well, you want to see. You want to see. I reckon there's going to be shenanigans. I honestly do. I think no matter how much this is there and how much it's obvious, I think there'll be political manoeuvrings and shenanigans in order to make sure that, we can use this excuse and we can use this excuse. And, oh, look, if we use this thing here, we can basically make it go away. And that's what will happen. And if it does, when Labour gets in, they need to hold that up and destroy that and then get these people in to say, no, we're reopening it, we've changed the law, and we are making this retrospective because we believe the people of Scotland deserve justice. So either they prosecute or the Labour Party must come in and prosecute for them. Of course, the possibility is that, they're just going to get away with it. But hey, thank you very much for watching. I'm just going to stop here. I'm not going to even come up. I'm just going to stop here because I just think it's appropriate just to stop and say thank you once again to Leslie and to let you all go. Our normal service will be resumed, but this I felt was important. So, this will run and run. Do please hit the subscribe button. Do please hit the like button. Thank you and goodbye.